That's right. Greetings, fellow Armchair Imagineers. Tiki here, and welcome to the show, which comes with guaranteed creativity and a forecast of inspiration. It's blue skies ahead. Time to go Ridestormin. Oh, excuse me, folks. Okay, so I've got to tell you guys, this has been one hell of a Ridestormin episode to do. Journey into Imagination Redo won the poll a couple weeks ago. And we've run into some situations since then that's made it a little bit hard to get that episode out to y'all. And I'm going to be completely upfront about this and say one of the problems is that, frankly, I kind of got writer's block with it, especially doing it from the perspective of a journey into imagination. I had the one idea in my head to kind of make it a little bit of a Mary Blair style attraction, kind of take inspiration from her artwork and her signature style. And I just couldn't figure out what to do with the show scenes. That's what I kept coming back to. Basically, what I would keep doing with this is I would keep basically just recycling famous scenes from the original ride. And, but there's a Mary Blair coat of paint on them. And, I don't know. That just wasn't sitting right with me. And I do want this particular show to be a memorable one for the channel. I want it to potentially be the flagship show. So I didn't want to put out a half-baked product. So I decided to hold off another week. And I got the idea to do, instead of imagination, basically what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to lay out an idea that I have to keep a lot of the core fundamentals of the Imagination Pavilion, mainly keep the pyramids, keep the more abstract theme, keep the childlike aesthetic, and of course, keep Figment, but recontextualize it to a theme that I actually think fits more in line with Epcot thematically, which is the Light and Color Pavilion. And that was kind of like a light bulb moment for me. I got to admit, like, just realizing that, hey, I could do a Figment ride and not necessarily have to have it be imagination. I just think with imagination, there's just, the well has been wrung and dried so much over the years in the Armchair Imagineering community of what to possibly do with an Imagineering ride. So yeah, and also I just want to point out here, unfortunately, Dragon was unable to make it. He should maybe be coming in about 15 minutes or so. Dragon, I am terribly sorry. Once you get here, I will recap things for you. But I just had to get started. I just wasn't sure. I wasn't hearing from you. My bad, Dragon. I'm sorry about that. That's what I'm talking about, folks. This has been a hell of a podcast to get off the ground. Hold on. Okay, so I think the Light and Color Pavilion really makes sense for Figment as far as essentially the exploration behind this pavilion and this attraction is going to be, shockingly enough, I know because of the title of the pavilion, the relationship that light and color have with each other and how they contrast off of each other. And that's going to be illustrated through the three pyramids that are going to be representative of the exterior. This is basically going to be a more elaborate version of what's already there with the glass pyramids. The cool thing about these glass pyramids is that all three of them, to different levels, have been covered over by small world style topiary. So it's almost as if nature and the glass is kind of like coming together. Like nature is almost like overtaking these glass pyramids in a way. There will be a couple smaller topiary animals that are going to be part of the exterior, but they won't be like big fixtures of it. It'd more kind of be like in the style of the Tree of Life, where they just kind of like fit into the background. You almost kind of have to notice them. And let's see. Also, more importantly, we have the actual glass of the pyramids is going to be designed in a way so that rainbows reflecting off of the glass is going to be a common occurrence. It's going to be something that just happens as you walk up to this pyramid, just based on the way that the glass is structured and the way that the glass is like leaning in on each other. Just naturally speaking, rays of color are going to bounce back and forth with each other on this glass pyramid and very naturally create a rainbow-like effect. And this is, of course, complemented even more at night by not necessarily a nighttime spectacular, but definitely a projection mapping show. And much like a lot of the modern day attractions, this one does kind of take a cue from from projection mapping and from stuff like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. I actually kind of did a lot with Runaway Railway as far as that goes. All right, I'm trying to delay for Dragon here, but I don't know how much I can do that. I'm probably going to crack this one out pretty quickly, guys. I got to admit, because I don't really have a ton of fabric of ideas for it. But one thing I will say, I just want to throw this out there like I do every show. If y'all have some suggestions on topics that you would like to see explored on Ridestormin, by all means, throw them out in the comments. There's also a thread on WDW Magic that you can also throw suggestions into. As long as we don't get over 5 suggestions in any given week, I can pretty much guarantee you that those suggestions will make it onto the weekly poll. I very much want this podcast. I'm still kind of trying to nurture it. I don't really think it's the flagship of the channel yet, but I want it to be. And I want it to be a flagship series where y'all are definitely actively involved in not necessarily the creation process, but definitely the pitching process as far as what we're actually covering. And, also, Dragon is not the only one who can do this as well. So if any of you actually wanted to come on, that's also, kind of an open door. Although, granted, if we haven't had you on the channel before in any capacity, we probably have to do like a test run with you first. But I digress. I want this show in particular to be pretty open and free range for people. I really want it to be the audience's show for this channel. Honestly, I feel like this channel's gone on a little bit too long with hardly having any Imagineering content at all. I kind of want to change that moving forward. I'm not saying we're going to veer away from the pop culture commentary that we've been doing. I definitely not. We're definitely going to keep up with that. That has been our bread and butter for a long time. But I don't know. I definitely want to do more park stuff in the future. And this is definitely a big part of it. How many times have I been saying definitely? Whew, okay. All right. So moving forward, as we enter the pyramid, we find ourselves in an incredible style, super sleek, super modern, super retro futuristic living room. This living room is meant to kind of like evoke almost kind of like an out of time sort of retro futurism aesthetic, very much kind of leaning into the 1950s ideal and version of retro futurism and what like a sleek kind of like house of the future version of modern interior design would look like. This is to kind of like give way to as you're going through this queue, it's to kind of like do a palette cleanser from the pyramids out front of, okay, this is kind of like the quote unquote real world, although things are a little bit exaggerated. And we're going to transition from the real world into the world of light and color. Let's see. I'm definitely taking some inspiration in this part of the queue from the new queue for Peter Pan's Flight in Disney World with the nursery setup. I definitely want there to be some hints to our Mary Blair character, where I'm thinking maybe like some blocks that spell out Mary's name. Definitely a lot of hidden little golden books. That's pretty important. Just little golden books throughout this queue. It's definitely going to be like a main sort of visual motif. And, as you're winding your way through this queue, taking in the details, you kind of put the pieces together that this is young Mary Blair's childhood home. It's not like supposed to be a recreation brick by brick of her actual childhood home, but rather it is an idealized sort of like bohemian artistic space that young Mary Blair grew up in. Not based in any sort of factual reality, just kind of to serve the purposes of our story for the attraction. And as far as the Mary Blair connection goes, she will definitely be represented by a small world style figure. There's there actually are some Mary Blair figures in different It's a Small World attractions. Famously, they hold they have like the artist beret, and they have the easel and I'm sorry, not the easel, but the thing with all the paint colors. I'm not explaining it well, but yes, and here's the thing. I think this is going to be a super unpopular opinion, guys, so be prepared here. Theme Park Priest says, that's so retro. Indeed. So be prepared here for an unpopular opinion. I am not a big fan of Dreamfinder. And honestly, I don't really think that Dreamfinder as a character and as a concept has really aged all that well. And I don't like, I realize he's a total fan favorite. I totally get that. And the big scene with him in the original ride was very memorable. If I'm being totally frank, I think that South Park kind of lampooned Dreamfinder so much in the Imagination Land series that I have a hard time taking that character seriously anymore. So because of that, that was really kind of like one of the big foundations for a child to be Figment's kind of sidekick on this adventure instead of just Dreamfinder. I don't know. Dreamfinder to me, I just feel like he's kind of like a little bit too much of an archetype. I feel like other characters have come along since him. And I also don't really think that he fits the light and color theme of the pavilion. And obviously, I think Mary Blair absolutely fits the color theme. I can see your point about Dreamfinder. Yeah, I mean, it's not that I dislike him as a character. I just think it honestly mostly comes down to the fact that I'm switching from imagination to light and color. I mean, it's like if this was an imagination ride, it'd be very hard to do a revival of Imagination and not at least mention Dreamfinder. But yeah, as it stands now, Figment is just going to be a playful dragon that teaches us about light and color. That's Figment's kind of like the one holdover from the themes of the original. Although another holdover and a big fan favorite thing that's going to be returning is in the queue for this attraction as we go from the that kind of retro futurism living room that I was talking about in the queue. We transition into the station of the ride. And what do we use as a transition? Why, it's the beloved rainbow tunnels from Imageworks. And these rainbow tunnels are extended. And basically what I want these rainbow tunnels to accomplish is the same sort of like super blissfully comfortable, almost like euphoric vibes that you get in a room like the space tunnel in the Space Mountain queue. I want this area to be like, you've been waiting through this queue, you've been going through the house, and then boom, finally you're at the rainbow tunnel, and the music is just how will colorblind people experience your attraction? Priest? That's a good question, man. That's a really good question. I don't know. I honestly don't have a good answer for that, Priest. I really don't. Especially because as you're gonna see, my attraction is very much gonna be interactive as well. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, you get the vibe I'm going for with this rainbow tunnel. Just the music, we'll probably have like some sort of like super calming, serene instrumental version of One Little Spark playing in this tunnel sequence. And then okay, I'm really trying to like stretch this out so that Dragon can pop on. He said I don't know, he said maybe 10:30. Trying to stretch it out so maybe he can come right at 10:30 while we get to the actual ride. Honestly, if not, it's fine. I can just go over the ride. I'm not really worried about it. So the boarding area is just a literal rainbow. It's just like top to bottom. The floor is just like a big rainbow. And essentially, let me explain the ride system here, because the ride system is kind of a combination of traditional Omnimovers and the Spider-Man technology. And with the Spider-Man technology, unfortunately, no, I do not mean the Islands of Adventure Spider-Man. I mean the California Adventure Spider-Man. With the sensors on the sides of the ride vehicle that you can interact with. I actually think this is going to be a more fluid and dynamic version of Spider-Man as far as the interaction goes, because I'm not trying to make it a shooting gallery. I'm not trying to make it I'm not trying to make it a game per se. It's more of sort of what it's more in line with, the idea that you are affecting the attraction with what you are doing with the interactive stuff, and less about like, hey, shoot the frickin' spider bots, go for the high score. There's no high score to be had here. It's more about using your creativity, using your imagination, and just kind of going wild with the tech. Anyways, so how the loading area will work is each ride vehicle will sit 1 to 4 people, and there will be one of those Spider-Man style sensors in the outline opening of the vehicle for guests to to be able to like wave their hands and stuff for Kinect style motion that will affect the ride. And what I'm picturing is, as far as capacity goes, sort of like, kind of like Ride and Go Seek. Definitely. So what I'm picturing is, as you go into the station, there will be like one ride vehicle, then a gap of about 2 Omnimovers, and then another ride vehicle, so on and so forth through the chain of Omnimovers. And the reason why I have it this way is because I don't want it to be just a consistent chain of Omnimovers. I want there to be space between each ride vehicle, enough to where the interactive stuff that's going on from scene to scene is not just colliding with each other as far as the different ride vehicles and the different guests. All right, so that's the whole setup for the ride. And I honestly do not think that Dragon's going to make it. We'll see. But Priest, I'm glad you're here at least, so you can provide some feedback. So let's see what next. And also, Priest, by all means, I keep saying this, but by all means, if you have a suggestion for a Ridestormin that you would like to see us cover, please throw it our way, Priest. That would be great. Okay, so let's get into the ride proper. We have 7 rooms to get through. Room 1, I like to call Now in Technicolor. So essentially what happens in this room is Figment turns a rather mundane living room into a thriving and colorful portrait. This is kind of like an opening scene to essentially illustrate how the projection mapping in the attraction can turn black and white drab settings into big colorful spaces. And then we go into the hallways, and the hallways are basically like a Midway Mania style stretch of screens. But the big difference here is that we enter a series of hallways in the next room. And through each of the hallways, we get to decorate the walls in different kinds of colors. So what I'm saying here is we'll have one wall that will be like a crayon wall, one wall that will be a pastels wall, another one for watercolors, another one for colored pencils, another one for magic markers. So basically, guests are kind of just like experimenting with their own creativity here. They're trying to figure out like what kind of different combinations they can come up with. I should also note that there is going to be a color wheel on each ride vehicle, and by the simple push of a button, guests can change the color that they are sending out onto the projection mapping. Yeah, Priest, it is going to be lower capacity, but like I said, it's more so just for the sake of providing the more intimate experience. And I do feel like the lower capacity is going to be somewhat counteracted by the fact that it is in fact an Omnimover. It's going to be continuously loading. There's still going to be, it's going to be like a chain of ride vehicles. There's just going to be more space in between the ride vehicles than there usually is on a typical Omnimover. So I'm hoping the capacity will still be there, just in a more intimate kind of function. All right, so yeah, with the hallways, I don't know. I just really like the idea of these hallways as like a framework where you're just kind of you're literally just kind of like throwing paint and colored pencils and oil pastels onto the walls, seeing what sticks, seeing what good color combinations there are. I think this technology could potentially be really cool. I think it could potentially make it really rewritable. As for the colorblind, I mean, I guess my argument there is at the very least with this hallways, they're getting different textures with the crayons and pastels and watercolors, etc. So even though they can't really make out the different colors, they're still making out the different artistic textures. I know that's not the same, but all right, room 3, I like to simply just call inside the Kaleidoscope. And the idea of this room is quite simple and quite practical. Prompt: rides the epic universe needs. Okay, Bree. So let me just kind of I want to get the exact details here. Are you saying to pitch a ride for Epic Universe based on the IP that we already know is coming into the park? Or are you saying pitch an IP that Epic Universe needs? Because as it stands now, I know we know about Super Nintendo World, we know about the Universal Monsters, probably How to Train Your Dragons, probably Fantastic Beasts. So do you want us to pitch an attraction within the framework of one of those, one of the lands that we already know about? Or do you want us to throw a brand new IP into the equation? If you could clarify that, I'd be happy to throw it on there. All right. So, nearly done here. So the idea of the Kaleidoscope room is that you are inside a giant kaleidoscope. And frankly, through the very functional, very practical technology, that's exactly what is happening here. Because kaleidoscopes are basically just mirrors that turn the surrounding area into a funky psychedelic wasteland. Dragon says he doesn't think he's going to make it, but that's okay, Dragon. Don't worry about it. Murphy's Law. It happens, Dragon. You know that I have, just speaking specifically to Dragon here, Dragon, you know that I've had a Murphy's Law night a lot, so don't worry about it. It's totally fine, bro. Priest says go with the ones we know. Yeah. So with the Kaleidoscope, I just think it's a cool kind of like mighty microscope kind of effect. And also what it does is it actually looks into a hidden wall that's in the queue. so we can look into the queue, see the guests in the queue all distorted in like giant kaleidoscope mirrors. I think it'd be a really trippy, cool kind of effect. And like I said, a very practical one at that. A lot of this ride is going to be digital, as far as the projection mapping effects and stuff like that. And, and the motion sensors. A lot of it is going to be very driven on modern day technology. But there is definitely still going to be an element of having, these old school kind of magician's trick style practical effects. That's not going to be entirely lost here, because I feel like Journey into Imagination, that's one of the it's one of the attractions just based on the actual like foundation of it that sort of thrives on the practical effects. So I don't want to just entirely ditch that element of it. I definitely want to kind of nurture it, but still explore more of the technology at play here. All right, so let's see as we keep going on. Room 4 is a completely room 4 is basically what I like to call the sounds dangerous room, where it's a completely dark room. We get kind of essentially it's like the absence of color. It's illustrating that without light there is no color, there is nothing. And that's one thing I do want to hit on, is that I do think the pavilion could do a really good job of illustrating the relationship that light and color have with each other, and how color literally cannot exist without light. So playing with lighting, playing with color, playing with different combinations of that's the big that's the forefront here. And also in this Are You Afraid of the Dark sequence, we have 4D sound effects. So it'll basically be like the second coming of Sounds Dangerous starring Drew Carey with the sound effects department. I feel like all the sound effects could be like maybe like worked into the actual ride vehicle itself, kind of the 3D sound of it all, is if it's like going on like above the guests' heads or something like that. I think that'd be kind of cool. And then boom, jump scare. There's a hyper realistic Figment that kind of jumps out at you. We will talk about hyper realistic Figment a little later. All right, room 5, the Funhouse. I'm just going to read off my notes here. Explore a series of crazy, all-encompassing funhouse mirrors and how different lighting packages can completely shift the mood. So that's pretty self-explanatory here. I tried getting into the... Oh, Priest, if you want in on it, I mean, honestly, Priest, that's nice of you. I just, I'm so far into it at this point that I think I'll just finish it solo here. But, by all means, if you do want to join me in the future, then feel free to let me know. With waiting for Dragon, I probably could have messaged you. Anyway. Oh, I'm sorry. And go with the ones we know. So you mean with Epic Universe. So okay. So I got it. So e-ticket for Epic Universe. All right. I will certainly add that to the poll. Even Pooh's Honey Hunt has some good special effects. Yeah, Pooh's Honey Hunt, I think, is still one of the all-time great examples of a trackless dark ride. It came first, and I still think they did some things better than any other trackless dark ride. Okay, but let's see. So yeah, with the Funhouse, it's basically like a trippy Funhouse, a trippy collection of Funhouse mirrors that distort size. And another thing that I should point out here, as far as the inspiration goes, is that this is definitely a spiritual successor to Journey, or I'm sorry, not Journey into Imagination. Obviously, it's a spiritual successor to Journey into Imagination. It's a spiritual successor to Adventures Through Inner Space, just as far as like kind of like psychedelic projection effects and rooms that are much more built upon like sensory effects and stuff like that. There's not going to be a ton of actual like practical stuff here. And the practical stuff that is here is going to be optical illusions. Like I said, this big room full of funhouse mirrors that's just totally distorting your view on all surroundings. And then, as I said, the kind of the experiment of the different lighting in the room, the different colored lighting giving different moods. So this would be, obviously like a blue would be a little bit sad and somber, and then a red would be kind of like suspenseful and intense. More warm colors would be peaceful, and we kind of get a show of all of that, kind of showing how light and lighting can affect a mood of any individual room or surrounding or situation. All right, and then after that, we hit the penultimate room, which is the digital frontier. And let's see, in my notes, I have a digital display of how modern technology is paving the way for advancements in art. Okay, God, this is not well explained at all. Okay, so essentially this room is all about CGI, and it's all about how sometimes you need an artist's touch. You need an artist's touch when it comes to this sort of thing. And when things are in CGI, you get something horrifying like photorealistic Figment. I'm not gonna lie, photorealistic Figment is probably the thing in this pitch that I just don't really think this would fly with Disney. But the idea is leave Figment alone, leave him in his classic form. If you remake him using the awful live action Jon Favreau model, it'll just look super off-putting and weird and scaly. That being said, I don't really think this scene fits with the rest of the ride, and I think it's more of like a Universal style scene of like kind of like bashing the actual corporation. Kind of an awkward transition. Not gonna lie, not my best scene, probably the weakest scene in the whole thing, I think. And then room 7, Mary and Figment celebrate a victory over a knocked out dragon. Okay, yes. So basically in this whole room, we have the knocked out photorealistic Figment and the Small World style Mary Blair doll and an animatronic of, the Figment that you know and love. Maybe an animatronic that's more akin to like an Olaf or a Navi Shaman, where the movement is super fluid like we have never seen before. This would definitely be like the showcase animatronic of the attraction. But most importantly, in this room, we have a bunch of mini glass pyramids, like essentially like an even bigger, even broader version of the exterior, where there's just glass pyramids bouncing off of glass pyramids. And essentially what this is doing is this is causing a whole heck of a lot of rainbows bouncing off of each other, again, because of the way that the mirrors are fixed and the lighting. It all creates one big optical illusion of rainbows bouncing off of these pyramids as we work our way into the finale. Okay. Dragon is here, but I mean, I'm literally at the end. Let me in for the finale. Okay. All right. Dragon, I have let you in for the finale.
All right. What do we got?
Oh, dear. Okay. Have you watched any of it, or do I need to do like a full recap?
No, I've gotten the middle of it.
Okay, well, basically the gist of this whole ride is that it's it's kind of like a Spider-Man style ride where you can do motion stuff to throw colors onto screens.
Yep.
It's kind of illustrating how lighting changes colors and plays around with different colors, kind of illustrating like optical effects that you can do with mirrors and stuff like that to get
Very
different
Kaleidoscope.
Yeah. And the finale is basically an amalgamation of a lot of the different effects that we've seen, combined with kind of like a more impressive version of the exterior, where the exterior with the pyramids, it's the rainbow connection, as theme park priest calls it, indeed. The exterior with the 3 pyramids is basically designed to where, like, if you are standing at it from the right angle, you might see a rainbow or two. Whereas this final room, there's dozens of different miniature glass pyramids. And through projection mapping, through different lighting effects, the rainbows are just bouncing off of each other like crazy. It's basically like this surrealistic, all kinds of glass pyramids, all kinds of rainbows. Like I said, Mary Blair and Figment are there kind of celebrating a victory. And it's very much just kind of like this surrealist sort of image to go out on.
I have one question.
Sure.
Why Mary Blair?
Why Mary Blair? Because I wanted a person for Figment to be able to bounce off of in the ride. I don't know if you caught it or not, but I did explain why I thought that Dreamfinder was kind of an outdated character conceptually. And also, if I'm switching to the Light and Color Pavilion, I really don't think Dreamfinder fits in there. But you know who fits into a pavilion that's all about color? Perhaps the best Imagineer ever when it comes to color, Mary Blair. And as far as Mary Blair goes, like, she's not going to be like in your face in the attraction. She'll pop up a couple times, and the queue is themed around her. But I like the point of her is basically to show it from like to show the attraction and everything going on from a child's perspective, and how a child would be kind of like really enamored by the color and the lighting that we're seeing through this attraction. But obviously with Mary Blair's, the reason why it's a child Mary Blair and not an adult Mary Blair is the idea is that maybe maybe Figment and maybe Figment was Mary Blair's imaginary friend in childhood, and then helped craft her appreciation for color. And I don't know. It's a little bit vague. I will admit, I could have just cut out Mary Blair from this entirely if I wanted to, especially once I went into the Light and Color Pavilion direction and dropped kind of like the Journey into Imagination thing. But I think it fits fine just based on the fact that Mary Blair herself was obviously color was like a huge thing with her career. I think having the little golden books and the queue and stuff like that would be like kind of like a good sort of visual homage. I think the whole thing could be kind of like a like a callback to the different achievements in her life and her career. But it wouldn't just be the Mary Blair ride, and you wouldn't even hear the name Mary Blair in the ride. It's just if you know, you know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. But so you're saying, I like the idea of Mary Blair as being like either an Easter egg of like, okay, if you know who that is, that makes the little girl in the ride like all the more
right.
special.
Exactly. It's not supposed to just be like, hey kids, look, it's world famous Imagineer Mary Blair. Do you know she designed the little golden books? So I mean, like there's nothing like that.
It's not a bad update, going from like I believe what it was. So I guess Dreamfinder was Eric Idle. Is that what it was? Or
no. Dreamfinder was an old kind of like a Gandalf style like wizard dude, and then Eric Idle just played some corporate jerk.
Right. Okay.
All right. Well, yeah. So I think that's about it. Thanks for coming on eventually, Dragon. I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. And Dragon, honestly, don't worry about it. Whatever happened with you, I throw crap at you all the time with Murphy's Law affecting me, so it's all good, buddy. It's all good.
Well, look, the key difference, I was fighting tooth and nail to get here, as you can kind of tell by my appearance here. So I mean, I was,
sure.
That's the key difference there. But yes,
fair enough. All right, so big thanks to Theme Park Priest for joining us. I'm glad we finally got this episode out of the way. We can now put up a poll that, hopefully comes with something that's going to be, that's not going to give me writer's block like this one did. And, okay. Well, folks, the blue skies mean our work is done. But you better batten down the hatches because there's another storm coming. That'll be a bigger and better ride of tomorrow than ever before. remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. Yes, we can. We can. Choppy vocals.